Higuana Sensei is a master of karate. He holds a 7th Dan black belt. At 42, he is young to be accepted as a master. This status he has earned by an almost mystical level of skill and power. He lives in Okinawa, an island in the Ryukyu group off Japan. Karate started here 500 years ago, when King Shohashi disarmed his warriors to prevent civil war. Without weapons, but with a powerful fighting tradition, the warriors secretly developed karate, the art of the empty hand. The technique remained secret to a small group of masters until, in the 1920s, it began to be taught in Tokyo. Now it is practiced all over the world. The Ryukyu Islands are in the northeast of the Pacific, between Japan and the Chinese mainland. The largest of the islands is Okinawa. The king's decree brought peace to the islands for many years. Unfortunately, it also meant that they became defenseless against an invading Japanese army in 1622. Eventually, the islands fell under Japanese rule. The Okinawan way of life was nearly destroyed in the Second World War. The Japanese fought bitterly against the Americans. Caught between the two armies, at least 50,000 civilians died. The young Higuana escaped because his father evacuated the family to Japan. Of their convoy of 3 ships, 2 were sunk. Higuana went back to Okinawa after the war. The islands remained an American base and were administered by them for 20 years. There is still a garrison of 50,000 men there. Now, once again under Japanese administration, the economy is reviving and the city is rebuilt. Higuana left to go to Tokyo to become a university student and then to be a karate instructor. He became unhappy about what he felt were alien influences upon his art, forcing it to develop in ways that he felt were wrong. After 25 years, he returned to Okinawa to help strengthen karate in the place where it began. The rough paved streets of the old city are the same that he knew as a boy before the bombs fell. The houses were destroyed, but the stone walls that surrounded them are still there, and still the home of snakes. Master Higuana lives in a family house in the city. His sister lives in the top flat. He and his wife share the next floor with his mother, and underneath, he has turned the garage into his dojo. He began to learn karate when he was 15. After 8 years, his master gave him his teaching license, and he began to instruct his own students in the art. It requires a rigorous pattern of daily exercise to maintain his status as an international master. After his morning run, before he even begins to practice karate, he exercises his whole body, section by section. He works through every group of muscles from his toes to his head, from his spine to the tips of his fingers. Although millions of people practice karate throughout the world, such determination is very rare. The hours of practice have changed his body. It is now close to the karate ideal. And the mind, too, is trained to achieve complete concentration in every action. Perfection is the aim in every exercise.
とにかく空手の場合は非常に難しくて、目的やはり我々は自分自身の心身を鍛錬する意味でやってますからね。やはり始めた動機も強くなれたら結局自分が自身が弱いからスタートしたんであって、 まあ強ければそれなりに、まあ、別の面の仕事を行きますけど、やはり空手というのはそこに、まあ魅力があって、まあ、始めたんですけどね。まあ時々、まあ、自分の人生ということはやはり一生を通して、まあ、できる仕事ですからね。まあ毎朝、まあ、稽古して打ち込んでいるんですけども。
Karate means literally empty hand, and its aim is to turn the bare hands into powerful defensive weapons. Some years ago, Master Higuana met a Chinese man who had hands which were truly like stone. He applied a special oil, a secret combination of herbs, to his hands every day. It helped the skin grow hard and calloused, protecting the bones and muscles underneath. Master Higuana asked for some of the oil, and ever since then his Chinese supplier has sent it regularly. The post he is striking is made of solid oak and is set in concrete at floor level. It is just flexible enough to stop the bones of his hands being damaged when he strikes it with full force. At the heart of Okinawan karate lies the kata. These are long sequences of fighting actions which employ all the most important techniques for attack and defense, one after another. They are linked together by steps forward, backwards and to the side, or by rapid turns to face a new imaginary opponent. Breath, posture, striking action and balance must all be harmonized at every moment in every action. To achieve this, Master Higuana works like a great dancer practicing for a performance. The level of skill is comparable, but the karate master seldom shares his mastery with an audience.
De kataの場合空間でただ自分一人でね、相手をかわそうしてやりますからね。やはり本当につかみどころのないこの相手がいない敵をかわそうしてやりますからね。結局100回目標にするとどうしても50回60回の疲れてきて精神的にこう参ってきますね。まあそういう時によしもう一回やろう、じゃあまたもう一回やろう、まあそういう積み重ねて、まあ、ある程度自分鍛えられて、まあいったと思いますけどね。
In this section from a kata, the soft, gentle blocking movements are accompanied by exhalation. They are followed by a lightning turn during which the master must inhale, ducking down slightly, then he rises and holds his breath to gain the power for a double punch. The solitary discipline of his life has been eased by his recent marriage. 3 years ago, Alana joined his class in his Tokyo dojo. They have one child, Seigi. It's not an easy place to live for someone used to the relaxed American way of life. Okinawa is isolated, and very few of the Americans who live there mix in local life.
はい。じゃあまあまあ。はい。
失礼します。
Karate is considered by most of the world to be a Japanese art. In fact, the main influence on its development was the Chinese martial arts. There are many schools of karate. Master Higuana practices Gojo Ryu, the hard and soft style. This has adapted the deep breathing techniques of the soft Chinese martial arts, like Tai Chi. Gojo Ryu has a special kata based on them called Sanchin. Here it is practiced by Master Miyagi. He has instructed Master Higuana for 25 years. The handing down of knowledge from one master to another has been crucial to the continuity and development of karate. Higuana spends many hours in discussion with the senior masters. Most of what they know is not written down, but Higuana believes that if the old traditions are to continue, then everything known must now be recorded. The discussions are often about tiny details, comparing the ways that long-dead masters taught and practiced. Kina Sensei is 72 years old. He wears a red belt, which is given only to untested beginners and to the most senior masters, signifying that the master has traveled the full circle of a life of karate. They use the language of Okinawa for these conversations. They say it's impossible to discuss karate properly in Japanese, since only Okinawan has the words for the details and the more profound concepts. Their conversations continually return to the subject of kata and how to perform each one. The hard and soft style of Gojo Ryu has 13 katas. The most advanced of these is called Super Rinpei. It is not taught to students until they have trained for at least 10 years. It consists of abrupt bursts of action contrasted with soft, slow, controlled movements. Mastery of this kata is considered to be mastery of karate itself. It consists of 112 separate sequences of moves. To perform it correctly requires total physical control. At the same time, the mind must be both alert and yet in a state of meditation. There is a powerful sense of striving in such a performance. Where other fighting arts relax into a fluid, easy style, karate keeps the tension and effort. It is said that at this level of performance, the master is not fighting any imaginary opponents, but is confronting only himself. The purpose of karate is to gain mastery over self.
「武器を持たない武術」といって空手はですね、やはりこう非常にみんな尊敬されているわけですよね。相当修行された先生というのはみんな武士と言われるわけですよね。日本の場合武士というと侍ですね。沖縄の武士と日本の武士というのは違うわけですね。沖縄の武士というのは空手を本当に難儀した修行した人に言われるわけです。やはり道というのは結局精神をね、空手を修行で精神鍛えると言われますけどね、平常心というんですかね。
In most places in the world, the teaching of children is considered suitable for the lower grades of black belt. However, in Okinawa, such is the concentration of expertise, the children are often taught by masters. Once formed, this relationship continues for life.
右から下段払い、右を見て、はい、右を見て、右を見て、右を見て、右段払い、右段払い、右段払い、3、はい、そうそう、よし、こうでしょ、こうね、何、こう、 はい、じゃあ戻して、はい、顔を伏せ、はい、3、はい、これ反対、こう、ね、はい。
There are two main paths in karate. The traditional way is that of self-defense, leading after years of practice to self-discipline. This is the path taught by the traditionalists, including Higuana. The other path is taking karate away from this ideal into the world of sport, where training leads to sporting contests.
もも上げて伸ばして蹴る。はい。
Master Higuana returned to Okinawa because he felt that the sporting way was taking over. For him, karate can never be a sport. It is not possible to pull a punch or kick and still perform it properly. In pure karate, a blow must always be practiced with full power.
はい、やめー。はい、そこまで終わります。ありがとうございました。はい、ご苦労さんでした。
In the senior class, the students' ages range from 20 up to 50. Some are black belts of 4th and 5th Dan. Gradings are awarded after detailed and demanding examinations.
全くこうベタベタした形にするのね。その状態で打つようにね。肩身しないように。手をムチにすればいいやつ、ムチンは。よーい、はい、ジャンプして、そのまま弾みつけて、はい、弾み。ここがはいと言ったらすると、はい、パン。はい、弾みつけて、はい、飛んで。弾みつけて、はい、飛んで。はい、飛んで。最後。はい、飛んで。ほら。一回ついたらまた2回ついてもう1回つくんだよ。下がらない。はい、君から今度。はい。
They practice sequences of prepared sparring, which are designed to prepare the students for real fighting and the control of aggression. Though his classes in Okinawa are small, Master Higuana has students throughout the world. He is the head of an international Gojo Ryu organization, and he travels regularly to give classes in Europe, South Africa, and India. At the end of the class, the most senior students practice an extraordinary exercise in sustained tension, Sanchin Kata. They strip to the waist so that the master can detect any faults of posture or breathing.
やはり呼吸するときに全身の筋骨締めながらやるわけです。普通のヨガですと力抜いてでサンチの難しいところはこう丹田を締めた状態で固めた状態で呼吸するところに非常に難しいところがあるわけですね。でそのサンチンの場合に一番呼吸する場合にですね、まず視野を垂らす一番それが大事です。視野を垂らしてで正しい呼吸することですね。はいはいはい。
In Sanchin Kata, the student is trained both mentally and physically to feel unshakable, whatever the attack on him, to stand like a rock in a stormy sea. With feet set slightly apart and knees turned in, the groin is protected, and the fighter is very securely balanced.
はいはいはい。
で三鎮の呼吸法はですね、2通りあるわけです。最初は鼻から吸いましてまっすぐ声を落として、で丹田で巻きつけます。もう一つはこう背中を取って下からこう打って、で丹田でこう巻きつける、こういうの技2通りあるわけです。でこれはこの動作と調和を取りながらやるわけです。技と一緒に。はい、で今度は側面ですね。今度こっちに見て、はい、もう一回両膝を曲げてお尻を締める。はい、青引き。はい、もう一度の呼吸法は鼻から吸って円を描いて、はい、肛門を締めながら丹田でこう巻きつけると。で両膝を内に締めると。小さな肩をまず顎引きで肩を落とし肘を締める、で膝を締める、それからお尻締める、それからこう丹田顔をぐーっと中へこう巻きつける、それから足の側底はぴったり床へつける。そういう正しい姿勢で正しい呼吸すれば正しい三鎮が生まれますね。後ろも足を広気味にして、で側底、親指の線の側底ぴったりつけるようにね。で両膝をやや少し曲げます。はい、膝締めて、はい、肛門を締め上げます。はい、一つは全身の筋骨を締めるためです。やはりこう締めて、もし膝が弱くてガクッときた場合はまだ締まってない証拠で、もう
Wahera-san has been practicing Sanchin for many years. The prolonged muscular tension has developed his strength. The combination of this tension with the special breathing and the harmonized pattern of movements has generated a deep inner concentration. Exercises like these must be practiced with great caution. If bad habits are allowed to develop, then the powerful tension in the chest can cause internal injury.
本当に鍛えたその筋肉というのは空気入れた周りと同じで、全然弱いの空気半分ベタベタしてますね。同じ鍛えてない人はもう手が食い込むわけです。本当に鍛えた三鎮というのは手が弾け打つ方が痛いぐらいね。そのぐらい、そういう意味のまた鍛錬でもあるわけです。精神面とで筋力とそういう面の鍛錬です。でこうさするのは姿勢を直すためと、でもう一つは相手を作っていくと。精神面、
どういうことですか？
もちろん力をつけていくと。精神面かつ筋骨を、そういう意味の締めというんですね。よし、はい。
Kamimura-san is one of Higuana Sensei's most senior students. He can reach such a deep state of meditation that he doesn't appear to even notice the fierce slaps.
はい、脇締めながら、はい、はい、はい、はい、はい、手にやって、はい、吸って、はい。はい、宮城先生。はい。私にとって空手は一つの人生であり、また哲学であり、一つ風また雲みたいなもんですね。つかみどころのない。ですからもう毎日一日その空手に挑戦をして何かつかもうとしてるんですけども、なかなかつかめなくて。毎日悪戦苦闘してるんですけども。
Karate is a product of Okinawa's island culture, which is more than 1,000 years old. It was a peasant community until Chinese and Japanese visits in the 8th and 9th centuries. The inhabitants gradually formed 3 rival kingdoms on the island. Okinawa was unified in 1429 by King Shohashi. The walls of his palace and the royal tombs have been rebuilt. After he disarmed the noblemen, A court of astonishing splendor grew up around him. The Ryukyu Islands, of which Okinawa is part, became a rich trading nation, the Venice of the Far East. Since trade was officially banned between Japan and China, they acted as the middlemen between them. They took their culture from the many countries that they traded with, but always adapted it, making it their own. The great turtle-backed tombs that are placed on hillsides all over the island came from the Chinese. The response of the working people of the island to being disarmed was to develop a fighting system based on using their tools as weapons. Fishermen developed combat skills using turtle shells as shields and fish spears as short swords, adopting the techniques of karate. Like the warriors, they also maintained it as a secret, concealed art. Master Higuana's research into karate includes a study of these weapons systems.
空手にもですね、
はい
こう打ち方の要領ありますけども、
はい
棒の場合のこう打ち込みありますね。その要領ですね。
はい、これはですね、
はい、
昔からこの棒で打つという言葉がないわけです。
Farmers learned to use threshing flails, horse bridles, and even these grindstone handles as weapons. These are particularly useful for defense against the sword, as the forearm can be used to block the sword strokes and thus penetrate the swordsman's defense.
指とか手のひね、それ、
これはですね、当たる瞬間、
はい、
力入れたんで相手押してしまいますから。
はいはい、
Even the small Japanese rice harvesting sickles have a special kata, designed to make them effective weapons. Each tool has been studied so that its special qualities of attack and defense are used. All the objects of everyday life were adapted by the peasants. On the other hand, the nobles always fought without weapons, maintaining the art of the empty hands. Out of the wreckage of war, other parts of the Okinawan culture survive. Their music, strongly influenced by Indonesian styles, and their skill in weaving and dyeing silk come together in the ancient court dances.
男踊りの代表的なものですね。
踊りにも空手にもですね、50の技が違いますね。踊りにも50ありますか
50ありますよ。ここの力の入れ方はよく似ておりますね。
Dance master Miyagi Sensei studied the same style of karate, Gojo Ryu, as Master Higuana, until he reached 4th Dan black belt status. He was learning to dance at the same time, and at this point, when he was nearly 40, he decided to dedicate the rest of his life to teaching dance. With 15 years of karate training behind him, Miyagi Sensei is deeply aware of the similarities between the two arts. He stresses that it is not just the movements that are the same. The actual way of performing the movements is also the same. The feet must move diagonally, then be firmly planted on the floor. The arms flow out gracefully, but are checked by tensing the muscles.
似てますね、全く。空手の場合でもこう目が一番大事ですね。もう目が先に、
そう今のところを見てごらんなさい。そう。
空手の場合あれは一本剣と言いますけども、こういう形は
やりますね。
攻撃の形ですか。
そうそう。同じですね。
こう袖を隠すのはどういう意味ですか。袖を隠して
やはりこれは袖をつかまる時の形をきれいにするためですね。だけどこの握り方は空手と同じですね。
握り方ですね。 一つの意味がございますか？
いやこれはここは意味はないんだが、この握り方ですね、これなんとか名称がありましたでしょう。
空手では稽古剣と言いまして、鳥のくちばしと言います。
そうそうそう、これも同じです。これ
それから足、空手の場合は足の運びが大事ですけども、踊りの
Many of these dance movements are obviously related to karate. These blocking techniques, for example.
それは似てますね。八文字勝ちですね。
回るところの足使いですね。これももう三鎮じゃないですか。
そうですね。この測定が足の裏を押さえ、測定が全く床から離れないでスッといきますね。空手と全く同じです。
ああ、そうですか。この立ち方、腰の落とし方、歩き方、
全く空手と同じですね。
空手ともうほとんど同じですね。
そうですね。
それからこの開くところですね、力を抜いてここでピン、
瞬間的に力を込めると。
In 1393, the Chinese government sent a colony of artisans to Okinawa to teach the people the arts of writing, shipbuilding, lacquer work and pottery. The Okinawans already had crude pottery before the 14th century, but the Chinese potters added new skills and techniques. These, the Okinawans in their turn, developed and changed. They became famous for their pottery, and many well-known potters went to Okinawa before 1940 to learn from them, although the pre-war Japanese government tried to discourage this. They wanted a unified Japan, but they had trouble forcing the islanders to conform. The Okinawans cremated their dead and placed their ashes inside huge earthenware jars. Custom dictated that the ashes of one's ancestors be placed in a new jar every few decades, which means there is a constant demand for them. This potter works for 3 months, making several hundred funeral pots. Then they are all put into the kiln together. Just as the Chinese guided the Okinawans in pottery, so they did in karate. Over the past 4 centuries or more, Okinawan fighting masters have been visiting the Chinese mainland and studying martial arts there. Many of karate's katas were brought to Okinawa in this way, but after they arrived in Okinawa, they were modified and developed to become part of the local fighting system. This was always the principle of their lives, to learn from everyone, but to transform what they learned to suit their own strong characters. This Chinese lion gets an Okinawan face. Fighters traditionally use clay jars for strengthening their fingers and hands.
高さはこれでちょい小さめにいいですよ。これでいいんじゃないですか。少しのね。
Every week, a small group of the most senior students gather to do body strengthening exercises and practice the most advanced karate skills. They use a mixture of local and foreign training aids. This loop of solid iron is an Hawaiian training invention. It weighs about 60 pounds. The people of Okinawa have always been stocky, with short, powerful legs, the physique of seafaring people. Karate matches their bodies, giving them a strength much greater than seems possible for their size.
Thisから自分から手出して喧嘩はしないよと そういう戒めでもう肩は全部怪我が始まってますからね。相手が攻撃しようとする挑発的なものはやはりその抑えるのが我々の務めですからね。やむを得ない時はそれはディフェンスでやる場合もありますけども、目的はまずこの抑えるのが目的です。相手のその攻撃しようという心をですね。
そうす
やは
ると
り平和主義ですからね。自分から攻撃しないです。
Although katas are usually practiced alone, occasionally, Higuana Sensei goes through one of the katas using opponents to demonstrate exactly how each movement is applied. This is very dangerous, requiring practice and extremely careful timing. For this exercise, Sensei uses his two most trusted students, Uehara-san and Kamimura-san. Though they are taught that karate is a defensive art, when the fighting starts there is no lack of brutal techniques. Many of the hand and elbow blows which Sensei is using are lethal. They strike into nerve centers and other vital points. The kick with the left leg is a feint, designed to pull the opponent down and onto the powerful right-legged kick. For the devotees of karate, then, fighting is not something to be fooled with or played at. It should never happen. They train themselves relentlessly to learn the self-control which prevents fighting breaking out. Their tradition has grown up amid centuries of foreigners invading their small island. Its central philosophy teaches calmness and preparedness in the face of adversity. If Higuana Sensei has his way, this philosophy of control and self-mastery will be taught, alongside the techniques, to practitioners of karate all over the world.
And it's Kung Fu, same time, same place, next week.